Hey guys, I'm John Mosho, and you're listening to Nack Goes to the Movies, the one-stop shop podcast for all things movie, TV, and pop culture.
Turns out he's a major cinephile. They don't watch enough movies! It's a very simple formula! And here we go. Okay, folks, we are done with slasher movies. For now, episode 14 is coming at you, and this is a big one. We have all of our previous podcast guests going back into the deep wells of history. We got Jon Mosho, Jon Butensky. The Red Fox Nation is on the call here. So guys, happy November, or whatever. Let's have a little catch up, and you guys are used to this. We'll do some icebreakers for fun. Let's do favorite Halloween movie to watch yearly, and for this one, we'll start with Jon Butensky.
I don't like Halloween, to be honest with you. I'm gonna be so boring.
What is it? Let's like there's gotta be some festive film you like.
No, there is no Halloween movie off the top of my head I could just think of. Like
Medea Goes to Prison's gotta be it.
Sure, let's go with that.
Well, Mosho, I guess we'll go to you for the question. What about you, sir? What's your like festive movie that gets you in the mood?
Well, it's not as much a movie actually as it's a short little TV show, but every like October Halloween season, I always go back and watch Over the Garden Wall, which is like a nice little short, probably hour and a half total Cartoon Network show. Very cute, very adorable, just growing up with boys. It's really great. If we're talking about iconic Halloween movies, though, you either got to go Halloween Towns, like 1 or 2. Those are excellent. And then you can also throw in the Twitches series, because just like, why not? Because they're also great. So obviously thrown back to the kid days.
It's funny. I actually, for the first time, saw the 2 Twitches movie like 2 days ago and Beetlejuice. All 3 of those like first time within like a day. Beetlejuice was great. Loved it. The Twitches movies, I liked the first one. The second one was like painful. And like, look, Halloween Town 1 and 2, great. 3, okay. 4, trash. Like Disney Channel sequels, I don't think do super well, do they?
Probably not.
I think that's what they're known for. That might be Disney in general. But John, I'm hoping, Butensky, that this next question can be a little more your speed, as it's not thematic.
Let's do this.
What movies or movie have you watched recently? Like, what have you been? What have you been watching recently?
I got a good one. I watched Snowpiercer for the first time recently, and I know that's a Johnny Mosho favorite.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, it's so good.
And I thought it was just okay.
Oh,
did not think it was
heart.
Outstanding by any means.
That's crazy. That's a bad take. It's such a good movie. You guys haven't seen it. It's excellent. It's by the same guy that did Parasite. Just all about social class struggles and these people that are stuck on a never-ending train and their battle to go from poverty to wealthy. And it's just phenomenal. It's really, really good.
I saw it too. I mean, Chris Evans is in it, so I figured Butensky might like that part alone. Isn't he the main guy, right? I'm not crazy.
No, he was very good in it. And there's nothing against Chris Evans. I thought the ending was just kind of blah. Like it's like, yeah, a polar bear survived. That doesn't mean that humans can survive a planet that's like destroyed.
I thought it was okay. Like I didn't hate it.
No, I didn't hate it, but like I wasn't blown away personally.
Well, there is a TV show coming out. I don't know if
Mosho is excited
for that. Oh, I haven't.
The commercials are really annoying.
Yeah. Is it good?
I haven't watched it. I don't know. I need to watch it.
I'll have to chalk it up to the list, but it's always good to catch up and see what you guys are watching. Obviously, I know what you guys have been watching to prep for this show, and this is a big one, folks. Now that we're all caught up, let's get right into it. This week, it's Freeform's kickoff to Christmas all November long. Home Alone, The Santa Claus, Nightmare Before Christmas. So many. I'm just kidding. I wanted to.
Fun rerun.
For Christmas is you.
I know we're just doing Freeform every month because there's a seasonal thing every month. Just kidding. I mean, that is a real thing. I think that's crazy that there's a kickoff to Christmas, the Halloween one, and then there's the Christmas one. We're gonna skip that one for this podcast. We're gonna clearly go December. We can dive into it, but for now, what are we actually talking about? Well, ton of excitement for season 2 of The Mandalorian, which dropped last Friday on Disney Plus. By the time this episode drops, you will have the second episode of the show out and available to watch. watch, but we're going to do a little talking of season 1, what we liked about the 7M season 1, if there was anything we didn't like. And I know these guys are chomping at the bit to make some bold predictions. But before we get to it, there's been a little chat pre-show about a rule that our friend Jon Butensky wanted to make. So what is this rule? We don't know what this is, so this is a surprise.
They don't know this rule, folks. And while we were discussing about having this podcast, I said there is one thing that we must do, and that is, drum roll, we cannot call so-called air quotes Baby Yoda. We must call him the child, because it drives me bonkers that people call him Baby Yoda, because it is clearly not the offspring of Yoda. And we are Star Wars experts, and we're not going to fall into that trap. Yes, that was an Admiral Akbar reference, but we're not calling him Baby Yoda. We're gonna have like a swear jar or something where if someone slips, they gotta like drop money into the swear jar.
How can you just say something so negative towards the cutest character in the world?
It's not negative, it's just the truth. Like,
I mean, it's Baby Yoda. He's so cute, and he's got the big old ears.
One of my favorite characters, but he's not Baby Yoda. Like, I also just think the child is so much cooler. Like, if you say it like in a Giancarlo Esposito, like,
yeah, can you do that for us? You're quite good at impressions. Can we get a taste? We've heard your Man in Black, but we haven't heard.
We'll save it for when I do discuss.
I'm very excited to hear this. I'm sure John and I are going to go hard on hello, Dolores. Hello.
I'm excited to talk about child with you, John, then.
Yes,
the child.
That is my number one rule, that we have to call him the child.
I'm looking at my notes and I already see a few oopses, so I will do my best.
No, if you slip, it's all right.
I appreciate that, but that's fair. It's for our Star Wars experts, which I like to think we are. That is technically true, and even in the if you went and bought one of the plush ones at Target, like it is called the child.
Exactly.
It's slang that wrong classification of this character.
The general population.
You're trying to keep them woke. I get it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. We do try to educate on Nick Nack Goes to the Movie, so I appreciate that. That's a good point. Let's get into it. Now we know our magical rule. We'll do our best for you folks and for you Butensky. Show's season 1 came out and probably finished its run before episode 9 dropped in theaters. I watched this show much later, but with movies 8 and 9 not being super well received. First off, what did you guys think when you were seeing promotional material for this? Like what you saw in trailers or images? What was your positive, negative? What was your gut reaction telling you? We'll start with Mosho on this one.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was another Star Wars thing, and I was always excited for it because it was breaking out of that classic model that they had with the prequels and with the sequels or whatever you call 7, 8, and 9. So I was always looking forward to just them expanding on the Star Wars world while not being in that world. So all along, I knew I was going to watch it. It was just a matter of time of when I was going to get Disney Plus, which I ended up getting fairly early. So yeah, Mandalorian, I probably started after like the second or third week in, and it was great.
Well, I got Disney Plus literally the day it came out. I said to myself I was going to wait, and honestly, I don't remember why I was going to wait. Maybe it was more just to watch it in one shot. I knew they were going to do the pretty new at that time, like the format of releasing every Friday, like once a week, and I caved in and bought it instantly just because I couldn't wait. And it was a huge risk by Disney, obviously, going outside the live action movie property and going into a television series. Obviously, there's been television series in the animated form, so this was a huge risk. I was very excited because I'm a sucker for the bounty hunters and Star Wars universe. So obviously, we got that as soon as we saw what Mandalorian looked like, and I love that old post-Empire nostalgia. I always think of like when he's on the Oro and like you see like the stormtrooper helmets like on the spokes, and the post-Empire regime is gone. So I love that feel of it. So like I had really good feeling going into it that they weren't going to mess this up. I was excited.
Yeah, I mean they spent the budget for these episodes is insane, and obviously you can see that. But I think I'm right there with you, man. With like the First Order stuff's fine, but I feel like we all have that tie to obviously it's the originals, and the Empire feels like this time, and seeing time elapse, and even you could say like some of the pre stuff with like Rogue One, and even to some degree Solo. I know iffy, but like just that time period it's exciting, seeing it through different times is exciting. And I'm right there with you, man. I was excited. Look, I loved, just like you, Boba, Jango Fett, you know, the bad guy bounty hunter stuff. You were just talking about the scene in Empire where they have all these crazy characters and they're all, you know, bounty hunters, and it's cool. I mean, look, they got rid of those characters like that in the movies. You know, one movie and, you know, maybe the equivalent of one movie with how much screen time Boba Fett actually got in the three, because technically he was in all three. The child looked great. I mean, we didn't see it in the marketing material, but when I finally dived in, it was so much later that the surprise of it was clearly gone. And maybe that's something that you had, John, that neither Moshe or I had, was we knew it was coming before. You know, it's an adorable thing, and it just felt like there was so much fan service and the bones of the Star Wars. It had that feel to it, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, the feel that's the big thing for me, is if, you know, we'll get into the discussion of like the newer trilogy, but I love that feel of like the old original trilogy, that galactic empire feel, that regime. So again, I got that feeling from the trailer instantly that we were going to get that.
Yeah, no, and something too that I think was awesome about this in particular is Mandalorian's just a Western in a sci-fi based world, which I just think is such a unique concept. It's really cool. Even in this newest season, actually, like they changed the aspect ratio midway through, which was like so cool to a certain extent, to see them just actually go for that classical feel, really show like a guy that sticks true to his morals and his values and sticks his guns and gets into fights. And I don't know, just the fact that they did this whole thing in Star Wars is unbelievably cool.
Absolutely, man. And like, what's the last space Western that I remember? Is what, Firefly? And that's it.
Probably. I've never even seen Firefly, actually, which I know is a sin for sci-fi fans. But I guess that'll be my
also.
oh my goodness! You guys have to get into shape. Jesus.
The last Western, do I dare say I've seen was Westworld.
It was a Western. It is something else entirely now.
When it was good.
It definitely is not. You could not call it a Western anymore.
No.
It is its own beast right now.
Those days are gone.
Those days are gone. So, not a question, but like, just how good is this cast? I mean, Pedro Pascal, Carl Weathers were for me the standouts for season one. I'm optimistic for some Giancarlo Esposito, since he's amazing, and you know, he may be the actor we probably talk most on the show. I don't know what the tracking goes, but I feel like we bring him up in some capacity every episode. Nick Nolte, super good. Didn't know it was him. It took a little to realize. Obviously, he was a voice actor, and I mean, I think there was some great just one-offs, especially that episode The Prisoner, where like it felt like there was every random comedian that existed at an acting role. Who's the standout for you guys? And we can go season two if you want. I would imagine you would go season one just because of the amount of time you had with those characters.
Yeah, I'll stick to season one just because we're kind of doing a recap of it. I mean, I'm honestly really not going to give Pedro Pascal like a lot of credit because we just really haven't seen a lot of him. It's not his fault. It's just his character. I mean, Carl Weathers was really good. I really enjoyed Werner Herzog as the client, playing this really shadowy, mysterious figure, part of, I guess, the broken up empire. So that was really neat. And sort of the mystery and shroud that, you know, surrounded him, I guess. And again, like you mentioned, like the prisoner episode, like I love like the little small cameo, the one episode, like Bill Burr was really funny to see. And Clancy Brown, who I feel like is in every single sci-fi related, you know, superhero related content. He was in that episode as well.
And he's Mr. Krabs.
Exactly.
Let's not forget that.
And I'm definitely forgetting about other people, but it's cool how they include like small little cameos from famous actors. And but I'll go Werner Herzog. I really enjoyed his character.
See, I more than their actual acting performances, I think you're doing some discredit there by not crediting Pedro Pascal more for that role, though. I think his just character is so well written. As I kind of mentioned before, too, he follows like a motto, a creed. And I think anytime you have a main character that's trying to do what's right in the world while following their creed and their religion, it just makes for a really fascinating character. You saw it too in Netflix's The Witcher series, where it's a quiet dude, but you're so intrigued by the way that they go about handling their everyday business. And I think it makes for a really unique and fascinating juxtaposition to have Pedro Pascal in The Mandalorian, who's like a badass, but he also really cares for the child. Like, I think that's such a fascinating world, and you see his character grow and develop, and he doesn't say a whole lot, and he doesn't do a whole lot of unique mannerisms. In fact, he's obviously covered up the entire time. But the fact that he's able to portray just being a badass while also being a really sensitive father-esque figure to this child, I think deserves a lot of credit. And it's a character that I was really drawn to outside of like Hertzog and everyone that you mentioned.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't the Mandalorian technically played by like a couple of people?
Yeah, you are right. And that's why I'm not really like, not that I'm not blown away by Pascal, but like half the time you don't even know who's playing the character.
That's interesting. I actually did not know that.
Yeah, it's not necessarily always him under the helmet. So
I mean, I think he's awesome, but
he is awesome.
That's the one thing I know. It's like a few people play the role. Like the same thing with like Jason and Michael Myers. It's like different people playing it sometimes in the same movie for like the stunts versus the acting. And obviously, the Mando is way more developed than either of those characters. He has a lot of talking, but certain parts are not him. But he's awesome. I mean, he's awesome. I got nervous. You brought up anything with Henry Cavill. I didn't know where we were going to go.
Yes,
John going.
The only reason why I watched The Witcher.
Well, really similar characters though. Think about it, just following their moral code and being badasses. It's pretty sweet.
No, I'm right there with you. We could get down a rabbit hole with Henry Cavill. That's the
for another podcast episode.
It's a whole nother episode just on him.
That'd be a great podcast, actually.
Would it?
Yeah, there's lots of content to talk about. Man from
like
Uncle, one of the most underrated films he's in.
Oh, that's.
Oh, Nick.
I like him in Tutors.
Movie.
I don't know how I feel about Man from Uncle.
Underrated.
I might be saying Uncle after watching.
Boo. We'll be right back, folks. So this is
That's the episode. So
do you guys want my one of my first bold predictions?
Henry Cavill?
It's a good time for it. It's a good time.
Okay, sure.
So, as you mentioned, we've seen a lot of comedians on this show for some odd reason. Disney just loves casting comedians.
John Mulaney's going to be on it.
So, I thought about John Mulaney, actually, but I didn't go with him.
Dave Chappelle?
Jerry Seinfeld will be cast as a Tongian. Misa no understand why the Mandalorian has a child. Misa no make sense.
I mean, when they had a joke, I thought they were going to try to bury that part of their past. And when they made a joke about it in that Prisoner episode, I was like, oh, I guess it's not done yet.
Nope.
I figured they wanted to distance themselves from that whole like archetype. You know what I mean? Clearly not.
No idea if it's going to happen. But that's my bold prediction is we will see Jerry Seinfeld, notorious for loving nerdy things as his Superman addiction was. So Jerry, where you at? I can't wait to see you.
Something. That is... I didn't know how we were going to sprinkle those in, but you just went right for it. That's something. So season 1, we talked a little bit about this actually right before recording. It feels kind of like there's a mini arc of episodes 1 to 3 with Mando getting the child. I actually wrote the child on that part. So just, I sometimes have it properly following your rules. A few more kind of fun, isolated one-off stories that are a bit more world building, exploring what's going on. And it kind of had a nice 2-episode arc wrap to show the true remnants of the Empire and not really why they're trying to get the child, but definitely it feels like there's more stakes than just one guy and a couple stormtroopers. We also obviously to season 1 and 2 shrunk our core cast of characters down drastically. We lost Nick Nolte, IG-88, and very much
IG-11. Nick
IG-11. Sorry, IG-88 is from Empire Strikes Back. Shame on me. Here to take my nerd badge with you. But 3 characters, your core group plus the child. What did you think? It's a long way to get to. What did you think of season 1 overall? We'll start with Butensky on this one.
Great, and I think you kind of mentioned if I have to take one negative from season 1, it is I personally wasn't at some point I think we can all agree there was 3 side episodes. Just to narrow it down, we'll say like what the episode where he meets Cara Dune on that forest planet, which I actually really enjoyed that episode, and we'll talk about that in a bit. The episode where we're introduced to Amy Sedaris' character on Tatooine, which was a great nod, and the Prisoners episode. It's at some point I'm like, okay, can we just get back to the original story? 1 or 2 episodes is cool, and I don't mind if they do those side stories, but as long as they have a connection to the overall story. And so far we're seeing 2 of those side episodes that obviously Cara Dune's a main character on the show now, so introducing her. We already got that in season 2 episode 1 with Amy Sedaris' character being reintroduced, Amanda going back to Tatooine. But I guess overall for the season, I loved it. Johnny mentioned it himself, like just a combination of like Star Wars and a Western, has that Western feel to it. Overall, I thought it was great.
Yeah, and I mean, to add on to that too, I think they definitely, obviously, as you brought up, they had the main storyline in the beginning, then they brought it back in the end. But even those middle episodes, while some of them were more important than others to the storyline, they all had important little snippets that progressed to the end. So I think they did a good job of at least tying it back into the main point. But I do think it was an episode too long in the middle, where they probably, honestly, I thought the Prisoners episode, while it was fun to see Bill Burr and all those guys, I thought that was the weakest of the episodes of the first season, just because it didn't really advance the plot as much as all of the other ones. But overall, as a whole, the season was great. I mean, there's a reason why everyone was talking about it. There's a reason why it garnered so much attention between Baby Yoda, or sorry, the child being very,
money
very
in the swear jar.
Two strikes on his record. Just throwing that out there.
my bad. Between the child being very, very cute, and between just Pedro Pascal's role in The Mandalorian as a character, and then the whole Avengers assembling that they did in episode 7, where they just kind of brought everybody back and had a whole team. I think they did a really nice job of creating characters that you were rooted for, that you cared about, and just overall made for a really good show.
And also just something that Johnny mentioned, like it's just, I mean, the season was great because it's just nice that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, they just get it. They get what the fans want. No nonsense, just really cool television that's entertaining. I think we can all agree that the new slate of movies that have come out in recent years have kind of been iffy at best with mixed reviews. I'm putting this on the record right now. We're doing a Rogue One podcast, and I know Johnny would be down for that. Nick, I love Rogue One. That is my favorite new movie that's come out from Star Wars, and I also like Solo as well. But
we'll stick with Rogue One.
I like Solo personally. I think it's an entertaining movie. But again, like Star Wars, the past couple of years, it's been kind of a mixed bag. I'm not a huge fan of the new trilogy. I actually like Force Awakens a lot, but that's about it. The fact that we're just getting great Star Wars content, like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, they just clearly get it. They get what fans want, so that's really appreciated. It's almost like a sigh of relief when the season ended. It's like, man, like they nailed it.
Well, it's funny because Filoni actually had a big part, obviously, in all the animated shows that also have, well, animation's not always like, some people just don't want to watch animated things. Take away that the movie was garbage. Like, they couldn't have started off worse. But like once the TV show got rolling, like you could tell the same thing. Like he just got it. Like Star Wars, he got it, whatever it was. And like that love is lovingly placed into the Mandalorian. And I quite liked season 1. I definitely didn't mind those 3 more isolated episodes because it felt like the focus was clearly placed on the first and last parts. And like maybe there was one episode, I actually would have said the episode with Sedaris on Tatooine was the one episode that I would have been like, slide that to the side more so than the Prisoners one. I think all of us would probably agree that the Cara Dune episode was like fine and great and no real issue there, especially because she's become a staple of the show. I don't know how much I felt about the Amy Sedaris one. I expected, more quickly up to season 2, get more of that Moff Gideon. I like what they did with him in season 1. I just expected more of a ramp up, and that is a soft tease. I love The Prisoner. I'm surprised that you are both not as, if you're in your rankings of if you got to take one episode, throw out the window, that might be the one. Because I liked how they kind of threw, you guys like the Western in Star Wars. I kind of like they had a heist movie. And, this is speaking of Mosho a little bit, but it kind of reminded me of like the Lovecraft Country, how every episode was like a different genre. You had the Scary House one, you had a war one, you had creepy little dancing kids one, all the staples, right, of the genre. And that's kind of how I felt with those isolated ones. And I mean, I definitely felt that way with with season 2 episode 1, and just kind of seeing how they make these more genre episodes. You guys are hearing me talk a lot about the Prisoner episode. If you had to say one episode, and now that there's 9, what's the best episode to you? We can start with Moshe on this one.
The best episode, I mean, I really do think it's probably episode 7. I just like the fact that they do get, like as I mentioned earlier, the whole Avengers Assemble feel where everybody comes together. He reunites the band more or less, and then there's the whole scene where Carl Withers' character is obviously trying to double cross them, but in reality, after seeing the whole dragon scenario or whatever beasts attacked them at the night and seeing Baby Yoda heal him, he obviously kills the associates that he's with, and then you get back more into the Moff Gideon story. I just think it told so much in that episode, and then just obviously that a very emotional ending with one of my favorite characters of the first season dying. It just made for a really impactful, and I think their largest episode of the season. So I would say episode 7 was the best.
Was that character Jason Sudeikis as the one stormtrooper? Was that your favorite? Who
That,
are you talking about?
That is Quill, right? That's his name?
Yeah. Queel, I think, is how he
Queel.
calls it.
Queel.
And John, before we get to you, just know John has 3 strikes now for calling it not the child. Just so you know.
Keep that rolling.
Keep that tally going. That's fine. Butensky, what about you?
If we're gonna just talk about season 1,
You can go any direction you want with this.
well, I'll start with season 1. My favorite episode is season 1. I mean, I really enjoyed every single episode in regards to the main storyline, honestly. But I just watched episode 2 last night with the Jawas, and I really enjoyed that one. I guess Johnny's episode as well is really good. But I have to say, like season 2, episode 1, I was blown away. And honestly, it probably is my favorite episode so far. We're gonna obviously talk more about the episode in depth, but just that nostalgic feel it gave. Like it gave a lot of nods to the past, which I'm a nerd for, and it was just so well done. An introduction of a new great character, tons of nods to old characters, seeing Tusken Raiders and R5. I knew it instantly. I was screaming to my brother, I'm like, that's R5D4. I knew who it was instantly, and just those nods and kind of learning about what a crate dragon was. Just a really entertaining and informative episode with a lot of potential for this season. So I know it was all over the place there, but I really loved the latest episode.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw the little scorching, I was like, oh, it's got a bad motivator, whatever. What about that one? Like, I mean, look, we know the things. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know all the exact Easter eggs, but like that one was one I like immediately with the scorch mark. I knew that's the thing that popped up on the other one.
Yeah.
Love it. No, I mean, that episode is full of fan service. And there's a reason we're going to talk in depth on that. Obviously, we've all seen season 1 at least once fully through. It's very easy to dive through. And even if you're waiting, to season 2 where you're waiting, maybe look, if you wait till late December, you're home, you got December, you got New Year's, you got that time, where this show will be done with season 2, you could binge through all 16 on a holiday break, like easily if you're waiting. Hopefully if you're waiting, you're not listening to this podcast, because spoilers, should have dropped that a little earlier maybe, but whatever, this is a recap. What do you expect? But I've probably watched it 4 or 5 times through. It's so easy to get through. But as we took this in an interesting direction of let's get a brief look at season 2 before we discuss, instead of going the full route. Now, part of that's my Halloween slasher movie thing that got in the way, but I kind of like how we got to see a taste before these predictions, before John and I were just guessing with our The Boys predictions. So we got a new season, we got a new episode to kick us off, to whet our palate. So I thought it was amazing. Butensky, I know we just came to you, but let's go right back to diving into this episode, this treat of small screen excellence.
Yeah, I mean, leading up to this season, we knew that a main part of it is going to be like Mando returning to the child where he's from and understanding and learning where he's from. How he was going to do that, we still don't know. That was obviously one of the main parts. Another one is introducing this villain, Giancarlo Esposito's character, who I'm blanking out on.
Moff Gideon.
Yep. Yes, thank you. And obviously Moff Gideon, the introduction of him really in episode 7 and 8. I'm not too knowledgeable about the TV shows, but him having the Darksaber was a really awesome treat from what I could tell from fans who really loved that. The end of episode 8 in season 1 kind of didn't really leave us much, and it's kind of us determining from the trailers where this season will lead to. And obviously episode 1 kind of brought us in a completely different direction, I guess, where we thought we would go originally. But yeah, it was kind of a mystery of where they were actually going to lead to going into this season.
No, I mean, I think for me, the thing that they did that was so cool with this first episode was just the fanfare, as John talked about. They just did a really good job expanding on characters that we had already known within the Star Wars universe and giving them another life and giving them another purpose. I mean, I thought for sure, for me, the best part was just showing that Tusken Raiders aren't just complete assholes the entire time. Like, they're in the movies, you don't view them as great characters, but then to show Mando getting along with them, which, by the way, how does Mando know Tusken language?
It's
like,
the second time he's done that, because he did it in season 1 too.
I know, but that bothers me. There's 2 things in the episode that bothered me. That was one of them. Like, how does he know that language? I need to know why. Hopefully they give us an answer as to why, because there's no part of Mando's history that we've seen yet that he would know that language. But besides the point, I thought it was really cool that they showed the Tusken Raiders having an actual purpose and teaming up with that small town to stop the legendary dragon. I can't remember what its name.
It's called a Crate Dragon.
No, it is a dragon. There we go. But I thought that was a really cool scene and just did a really good job diving into the fanfare. The other thing that kind of annoyed me, which people were kind of hyped for, but that scene where Mando and the Marshal are riding on the speeders and you see the Marshal riding on the pod. I don't know if you guys remember that scene in detail, but the Marshal just hardly opening his mouth starts going into his backstory on how he got the armor. And there's no way that you can hold a casual conversation while you're
so with you
in the desert, going, I don't know, it looks like 100, 200 miles per hour. And you're going to tell me that man's just going to lightly talk and tell his emotional story.
It's also super loud.
Yeah, they're super loud. That pissed me off when I was watching. I was like, are you kidding me? This doesn't make any sense. So I just assume Mando also has no idea the Marshal's background, because I think that was just a random scene that he couldn't hear the Marshal. Obviously, that's a joke. But that, outside of those two small gripes that I had, I thought it was an excellent episode.
Instead of a preview for this season, but more diving into the episode. Again, just the nods were just so cool. Like Johnny said, just getting to really know who the Tusken Raiders are. We spoke about this earlier, humanizing them. That, Mando says himself something on the lines of they're hunters, but they're good people in the sense that they'll fulfill a promise as long as you fulfill a promise. They won't attack you as long as you don't attack them. I think he said something like they won't hurt you as long as you don't raise a blaster on them or something. And just another great nod. I knew this instantly, just the nerd I am. The bartender, it's called a Weequay, and we were first introduced to one of those kinds in episode 6 on Jabba's sailboard. So I kind of nerded out to that. Just it's just small nods like that just really make me smile with this show. And Johnny, Johnny said, I love seeing the Marshals speeder bike. It was made out of old pod racer parts, and obviously that looks like it's Anakin's old pod.
It is. Yeah. It's cool.
And another cool fact that I've learned about after, so in the remastered version of A New Hope, when Luke originally gets attacked by the Tusken Raiders and Obi-Wan first arrives, he does this really annoying shrieking howl to scare them off, and I always hated it. Yeah, it was just a really awkward, and you can tell it's digitally remastered to this. Now I learned recently that noise is an impression of a crate dragon to scare them off.
Oh,
which is really interesting.
That is interesting.
Fun fact, I don't know if it was in the original movie or in the remastered version of episode 4, but when you see 3PO and R2 first land on Tatooine in the escape pod and they go their separate ways, and you see 3PO just roaming the desert, and there's a skeleton of a crate dragon in the background. I actually saw this scene today when I was watching it on TNT. But again, it's just those small nods that I just really loved and appreciated with this episode. And obviously we'll get into detail about the Marshal himself, but it's just a really great episode to start off the season.
I'll tell you, John, I think that other thing, you have to suspend disbelief, man, on that conversation. When they're talking on the speeders, I think you just have to let that one slide under the radar.
No way. That is so...
I thought of that instantly also. I'm
that took me out of the scene instantly. I was like, what the hell? There's no way you can hear this dude.
I definitely didn't have that thought when I was watching it. I don't know. I just said, yeah, they can talk. Star Wars.
Think about all the sand that's probably whipping into their mouths, and you're going to tell me that they enjoy that coarse sand sticking in their teeth?
Well, it's sand and coarse, and it gets everywhere, right? I hate the sand. It's so sandy. Writing. No, it's funny that you guys said it, because the same thing, we're led to believe the Tusken Raiders are these mom killing people, and they're just savages, and that whole dialogue, they're animals and I killed them.
They
like
killed
animals.
Shmi.
I killed them like animals.
Women and the children too.
All of them. I hate them. Like the sand. That's for your consideration for voice acting. But yeah, I mean, look, going in depth, I loved Timothy Oliphant. I didn't know what his role was going to be. Obviously, Scream 2 alum. I didn't know what he was going to be in this world. I have some expanded universe novels right back there, but I can't say I knew anything about this guy. But I guess he's really known for being a sheriff in Justified. I've never seen that FX show, but I'm sure there was some, oh, he's good in that, but seeing just just anyone in the Boba Fett armor. I mean, I think we all knew that wasn't Boba Fett when we first saw the armor, but just seeing that, some of those just connective tissue things from, season 1 and just a larger world of Star Wars, it was littered with Easter eggs. And you guys said a lot of them, which, I think all of us recognized. There was one that you would have had to freeze frame it, is the guy who's the voice actor for Darth Maul in the animated show was like one of the background people in the village. Sam Witwer, I think is his name. So, but like, not that anyone would like, you'd have to like eagle eye frame for frame to find that. Like the ones we mentioned were ones that like, if you know Star Wars, you're gonna pick those out of the crowd. Obviously Humanize the Sand People is great. And even though I'm gonna call them 2 Mandalorians, but obviously one's in armor and one is actually one, like seeing the scene where they both take off in their jetpacks. And like we've seen some Mandalorian combat things in the show, but there's something cool about seeing the 2 of them jetpack off, and the use of the rocket. And like we don't really ever see in the movies like the scope eye thing being used, and we see that here when he comes back to take the village. And like there's the special effects. I wrote special effects, but all that stuff felt like right at home with the movies. Like you could tell the budget. And obviously for me, seeing Tamora Morrison playing Boba Fett, there were rumors, right? I don't know if you guys knew, there was like, is he going to be Captain Rex from the Clone Wars show? Because they're going to bring Ahsoka back. He could be any clone. He could be multiple roles in the same role. I am very happy that he's clearly supposed to be Boba Fett, and the same guy as live action, the clone thing. It works well. I mean, I loved that. Not that was my favorite part, but fan service, Nick, that was probably the most exciting thing for me.
Jumping back to what you said, Nick, like the introduction of Cobb Vanth, who's played by Timothy Olyphant, and I knew he was going to be in the show, didn't know who he was playing, and I'm embarrassed to say the only thing I've ever seen him in was the Die Hard movie that he's in. I think he plays like the villain or something. That's the only movie I've seen him in, but I loved the introduction of his character. Yes, we probably knew he wasn't going to play Boba Fett, but seeing him in that armor, seeing that like hole mark in his helmet, like that's confirming that's definitely Boba Fett's armor, and how he was able to get that armor from the Jawas, and that they recovered it from a Sarlacc pit. So obviously his role is important to really talk about Boba Fett himself, but I just loved his character as well. How he's kind of a man of his word. Like, if you help me out with my people, I'll give you back the armor. It clearly belongs to you and your people. And just like another small nod, how Mando's gonna try to blow up the bantha, create Dragon's mouth, and he hits his jetpack and he goes flying off, like a nod to Return of the Jedi, pretty much how Boba Fett, and I said this with air quotes in my eyes, and how Han did it on accident. I really love that part as well. I'm gonna disagree with you on something, because you kind of mentioned how Tamora Morrison is definitely playing Boba Fett pretty much, and I want that to happen, but I think Favreau and Filoni want fans to think that immediately, like, oh, he's watching, the Mandalorian go off with his armor. But, and I'm so torn on this, because if he really is playing, because again, like you said, like there's no confirmation that he's playing Boba Fett yet. Like no one's officially announced it. We just knew he was going to be in the show, but we really didn't know who he was playing. If he is playing Boba Fett, great. Filoni and Favreau are the right guys to finally end this rumor of him being alive or not, and continuing his story. And obviously you have the perfect actor playing him. Isn't everything's set in stone to give this character justice, this fan beloved character justice. Think it very well may not be. Like you said, it could be a Commander Cody or a Captain Rex. I might have mixed those up, but it may be another clone, because again, Tamora Morrison is literally the spitting image of every clone. So they may want us, and if all we get of Boba Fett is seeing his armor back, okay, I'm fine with that. But I don't think we should jump to conclusion that he is definitely playing Boba Fett yet. I'm not going to believe it until I actually see it, if it is true, if it comes out of his own mouth.
But why would his face have been like burnt and whatnot? I feel like they made
angry.
I feel like they made the assumption though that he was Boba Fett because he got eaten by the Sarlacc. So obviously got like burnt in the ingestive tract or whatnot. And then with the armor,
digestive tract. Come on, man. Get your anatomies right.
My bad.
But Johnny, isn't that what they want you to think?
Because it's what it is.
Well,
I think they want you to think
because
it is what it is.
I think what they're going to do, rather than that, is I do think it's Boba Fett, but I think Boba Fett's going to be done being a Mandalorian. And I think that's how they're going to continue the show, because for more or less, he just wants out of the game. And so Mando's eventually going to find Boba Fett and then be like, look, I took off the mask. This is not who I am anymore. I'm a free man. I'm able to do what I want. I don't have to live my life by the code. And then you're going to have to follow Mando as he tries to decide, is it worth it for me to be a Mandalorian still, or do I want to stop following that creed?
I love what you're putting out there, but I think everything is wrong. Here's why I'm gonna say that. Because we know this Mandalorian code religion mostly from this show, a little bit in Clone Wars and Rebels. But for the most part, let's say the mask thing, right? You never take your mask off. We know Jango Fett didn't do that. You know, he clearly wasn't the code of the Mandalorians, right? He was clearly his own rogue entity. And by association, Boba Fett didn't learn that stuff from him. He was just, you know, he saw his dad's head pop off the helmet into, you know, 3 separate parts, you know, and we see him in the Clone Wars show, which is canon, and he's, you know, he's not Boba Fett, you know, he's like a teen, you know, bounty hunting as he can, but like, you know, he's clearly not well versed in the code. My thought was when he came out burned, he looked angry, like he, you know, he's finally, you know, he's out of this Sarlacc. I figured we were going to see like him climb out of something, you know what I mean? Because the thought is he was in the Sarlacc got eaten by the Krayt Dragon. The Krayt Dragon's dead. Now he's out because of it being dead, right? So he climbed out of 2 different creatures at the same time, and he is full of rage from being locked in this thing. Now, I'm said on some episode about, wow, wouldn't it be great if like in the book version he goes after like Han Solo, right? That makes sense. Clearly that can't happen. Like timeline wise, that they're not, no way they can get Harrison Ford to money to do it again. So I don't know what, like, if that's who he is, like his reaction is that guy knocked my jetpack off and got me into the freaking snake monster, and you know this other guy's my armor, so armor step 1. And I mean, I think, and we were talking about things that pull me out of it, the weirdest thing about the show is how no one knows what Jedi are, and it's not that long ago.
Yeah, you're right.
Like,
that is really odd. They were calling them like sorcerers in the
like the
season
fact that
1
no
finale.
one knows, someone knows, because the thought is Jedi were a thing, then they weren't, you know, but you'd think things like that would get passed on history wise. We don't know when this falls. Between 6 and 7 is the assumption. Luke's doing this Jedi Academy thing. Like there has to be somewhere. Now the thought is they're out in the middle of nowhere comparatively to the galaxy, so they're not getting all the, like, you know, central systems news, but like that's a little unbelievable, right? And like maybe, like, I think if Tamora Morrison is Boba Fett, which I do think he is 110%, we may see him again as a clone, but I think in that moment he was Boba Fett. I think he's gonna have some tie to the person who knows who the Jedi were, and he's clearly going to have a negative reaction because he has a history. Because that's actually, remember, yeah, he had the Luke interaction, but he also saw Samuel Jackson's character cut his dad's head off. Like he has a deep hatred towards the Jedi.
Good point. And I think you have to look at it like this also with Tamora Morrison's character. At the end there, I think there's 2 different scenarios you can look at. Was he going after Cobb Vanth because he had his armor? Was that the only reason? Or B, did he see another Mandalorian, and was he going after Mando, but he also happens to have his armor now?
I don't think he was ever going after Cobb Vanth. That's like, because
he has his armor though.
He never saw him with it though. In my version of the story, he's only out of the Sarlacc because the Krayt Dragon's dead.
But then everyone else would have saw him like exiting the body. Like how would?
I don't think there was any. No, but you also have to remember, Nick, that the Jawas got Boba Fett's armor a while ago.
I think he was following the Marshal, and now
he's following Mando.
I feel, yeah, or at least he knows Mando has the armor.
Nick, I'm sorry to cut you off, Johnny. Nick, are you convinced that Boba Fett just recently got released from the Sarlacc because they had made a nod that the Krayt Dragon ate the Sarlacc?
That line is the line that is making me think that. And now you're saying it. I think the thing that I want to know, and I don't know if we're going to see it, is how did he and the armor get separated in the digestive process? Because the armor seems to be in pretty good shape. And I guess the thought is, well, Beskar steel can survive stomach acid. But
I don't know if that's necessarily Beskar, though. I don't know if they actually confirmed that.
Well, let's take a brief assumption that all Mandalorian armor is something durable. It's durable, whatever it is.
My first assumption, though, would just be the Ewoks found some dude that was passed out on the side of the street, whatever. I don't know how he
Jawas, you mean?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Sorry, the Jawas.
That was a funny picture in my head.
And street, you mean sand?
The Jawas found some dude just like passed out on the side and just took off his armor and then brought in their ship and dipped.
Yeah, I think
that's the interpretation I had in my head also, Nick, to be honest with you. Not that I don't think you're wrong, but I also think you might be overthinking this. Like I think he's been out for years. Like I don't think he'd be able to survive without his armor.
I don't think he'd be able to survive without his armor, but in that movie, they make a big stink about like it takes years to be digested by the Sarlacc. In episode 6, it's like the most painful way to die. Like C-3PO says some ominous thing about like a long and painful death, and it's going to take a while for that to happen. And the thought is the only reason he's surviving as long is because of the armor, not because a normal person, it would hurt and suck, but like you would be dead eventually. Where he survived.
You also have to remember that the Sarlacc pit probably got destroyed as soon as the sail barge exploded. A giant explosion at that scene.
Maybe
that could have been something.
It's interesting. I didn't think of that. Yeah,
but I think I am focused on that knowledge based on that one line. You are correct. I assume that them saying the Krayt Dragon ate the Sarlacc meant that he was inside the thing still.
But that could have been years ago. Also, I don't know. There could be multiple Sarlacc pits, which I think there are. I don't think there's just one Sarlacc.
But yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. I am probably focusing on that one notion solely based on that one throwaway line where your logic jump does seem to make more sense. I'll cede that to you. That sounds more plausible than mine.
We need some more episodes to come out. That's what we need.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know when on Friday I'm gonna do it. Depending on how early it says. If it's out there before my workday starts, maybe it all depends on how early I wake up. Which quarantine hours and sleep, it's all skewed. But I love that we all thought the exact same thing with the Tusken Raiders as like the clear, interesting like standout of that episode was how it these people that were so compared to more so beasts than sentient creatures. Clearly this show has changed that look, briefly with the first season, but clearly in the second season. I think whenever they're and they clearly are going to go to Tatooine. Tatooine is always going to be like the birthplace of the Star Wars genre for a lot of people. Like the planet you think of, obviously, Hoth is more exciting, but they're in Tatooine almost every so often. One movie franchise, one of the three, someone will be in Tatooine for some reason or another.
This is the way.
This is the way. Also, we have some time still, but don't forget, Butensky, if we don't get that impersonation, you will be doing it at the end with no context. So
what questions do we have about Giancarlo Esposito? I mean, do you have your own sort
this next one may be
let's hear it,
up there.
Hear it.
And we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but I want to go further into it because I don't think you can do just one question. Bit of a tangent. Look, there are so many characters in the show. I mean, we mentioned some of the main ones, but even the background characters are like kind of well developed. I mean, Taika Waititi, who we've talked about a few times, the brain trust behind What We Do in the Shadows, resurgence, and the movie as well, but clearly the resurgence on FX, was the amazing voice actor for IG-11 from Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. Richard Ayoade is the other droid in Prisoners. Like, the people on this is endless. I feel personally like Giancarlo Esposito stole the show for me, even though he was only barely featured so far. I think his menace, his strong, imposing, it's like he says like that line, like of how important the thing that John's going to say is. I mean, he's so good as the current big bad teased in season 1, and we're assuming is going to be further explored in season 2. But for you guys, is there, even if it's not a main character, is there like an ancillary character that, maybe even a one-off that you're like, wow, like how are they going to keep pumping these like super well-developed brief stints of people?
First off, Giancarlo Esposito, he's just right now the hottest name as to be a villain in the world. I mean, he's in The Boys, he's in this, he's in Breaking Bad, and his character is the same every time. Just the educated, really smart, absolute, just horrible human being of a villain. And he's very good at that. He has that perfect, creepy little smile while also kind of being like, he's one of those guys that you could think is charming if you didn't really get to know him. And then like once he starts talking and the things that he says, it's always creepy and bad. It's like, he's really good in that character. So I think he's going to shine in this season. He shined in season 1. The character that I want to see more, and maybe it's just recency bias, but I did just watch all of season 1 as well. I haven't gotten into the Legends as much, but I really did like Timothy Olyphant in this first episode. And they obviously did that in season 1. It was a big thing. They introduced the characters and then they return at some point in the season. It seemed like him and the Mandalorian had some really good connection. I'd love to see more of him this season. Just another one of those guys. He runs in a very similar vein to the Mandalorian, where he's just going to do what's right for the people in his community and just a badass fighter along the way. So I hope to see a lot more of him too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll get my Giancarlo Esposito impression out of the way. The child is mine, or something, some of those lines. But
I don't know what's better, that or the Man in Black.
No, Giancarlo Esposito is so
definitely
much more.
The Man in Black is iconic.
I'm gonna steal this from The Ringer, but like Giancarlo Esposito in The Mandalorian is literally just Gus Fring in space. which is so true.
It is. No, it absolutely is.
Which is so true. But again, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, like he's just playing this former Imperial officer or something on those lines. You know,
he's a Moff. A Moff.
Yeah,
that's like their governors, I would say.
Exactly. Yeah. And clearly this guy has a history. Mando's mentioned that he was sort of in charge of the invasion of his home planet when they did like the flashback scenes. I'm really excited to see where they lead this character to, because obviously he wants the child, but like for what reason? I think I have some suspicions. I'm not going to say them because I don't want to, spoil anything potentially or anything, but where they're going to go with Moff Gideon, because like Johnny mentioned, he's the biggest name right now in terms of villains. Like he's outstanding on the boys, obviously, and he's just so like he plays this almost creepy like villain, extremely well spoken, polite, to the point, direct. All these like different character races that just make him like so cynical. So I'm really excited to see where they go. I'm also really excited to see where they go with John Leguizamo's character. In the first episode of season 2. No, I'm kidding. He's probably dead, but
it looks like he's dead. It did not seem like
I was very surprised to see that in the credits at the end. Sid the Sloth from Ice Age.
Yeah. I mean, he's known in other things. I'm sure he's known in better things.
Let's be real. He Sid the Sloth, like to all of us.
Oh my gosh, I feel like, I mean, I've seen him in so many more things. You guys keep going. I'm curious because I feel like I gotta do him justice on this.
in terms of other side characters that I'm excited to explore more of, I mean, again, they haven't confirmed this. I'm 9% sure that they are this is gonna be true, but there's rumors that Rosario Dawson is playing Ahsoka Tano, which is huge.
Gonna be so
the
cool.
fact that they're gonna have a Jedi on this show, and obviously she clearly knows who Yoda is or was at this point, and know that they're gonna be of the same species. And I feel like that if she is playing Ahsoka, that's gonna be the source of how we learn more about this child. Because at this point in the Star Wars universe, we've only seen 2 Yoda-like creatures. Obviously Yoda himself and Yaddle, which is from the original prequels.
Yep.
So Ahsoka is going to be key to really give us more of a history lesson. And I also think that going back, I know we keep beating this like a dead horse, but going back to like who Tamora Morris is playing, if he is playing a former clone trooper, is that clone trooper going to know who Ahsoka is? Like there's that connect. There's a lot of different angles you could take this, but I think no matter what, Ahsoka is going to be a really integral part of this show, obviously, if it is true, which I think it will be. But
someone who knows better can answer this for me. Is Ahsoka still a Jedi in this timeline?
Technically not.
Technically not. Okay, so maybe at least she can guide them to Jedi and eventually help them find their way a little bit more. My second thought off of what John said is we do all know what Giancarlo Esposito wants to do with the child, which will be my next bold prediction, which is definitely going to come true, is the child wants to be used to create the Death Star 3.
Whoa.
So
we're gonna get another Death Star.
I don't think that's it, but all right.
I don't buy that one.
We went with bold predictions here, guys.
I know that bold and I don't know, out of left field are different. And just so we dot our I's here, some of those acting roles, and I'm surprised some of you don't remember some of these. He's in John Wick 1 and 2, I think, as both. He's at least in 2, but I think he's in both. He is known, and I saw some. This movie was for its time good, but I don't like it now. It has very bad CGI. The Spawn movie, like that came out in the 90s, and obviously Ice Age was listed
he said
on
the
those
sloth.
credits.
Let's just go with that.
But I wanted to say I knew, and I think the other one, I don't know if you guys remember when they tried doing like a modern Romeo and Juliet, like Romeo plus Juliet that had like Leonardo DiCaprio. So it was like old language, but like they were using guns and duels and stuff and like blowing up gas stations. It's a wild watch. He is, right. I think, Mercutio or Tybalt, I think.
Gosh, that's like high school English classes. I'm not thinking about that.
Yeah, I'm not recalling, but
I'm just.
He said the sloth. Moving on.
I'm gonna say. Oh, he's also in Die Hard 2. I don't know
Is he in the one with Timothy Olyphant or no?
Die Hard 2. I don't know. I don't know that franchise. I've seen the first one with Hans Gruber, and like that's it. The first one was great. Eventually I'll do the others, but I have not had a burn desire to jump into those. But I just want us to do credit to him and not just call him the guy from Ice Age, because that seems like a horrible as your sole film credit on IMDb.
He brings so much joy to little children and adults now, so I don't think that's such a bad thing.
I guess Ice Age, it feels like you could watch a better film than Ice Age. That's all I'm saying. Like in the animated world, even in DreamWorks, I would do Shrek over Ice Age any day of the week. Any day of the week. Also, I think, and this is interesting, you guys talk a lot about Giancarlo Esposito and his like charming, disarming like way. We don't really see that much in The Mandalorian. Like, not really. I think because he plays the menacing role so well, we really haven't seen him be like charming or disarming yet. You're picking that up from Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad.
You are right, but he still has that smile. He has that smirk when he's giving that like he tells them in the end, or I think it's episode 7 of the first.
He's like describing the blaster.
Where he's describing the blaster, and then he's like, you know what, I'll give you a day to decide. And he like smirks a little bit. And he's like, yeah, like I'll give you some time because you're gonna die anyways, and you're screwed over. So, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like he gives off that charm that
I don't think
I agree. I still feel like he does also. He's direct, he's to the point, he knows what he wants, and he assumes that he's gonna get what he wants.
I don't think
going with that charm.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's interesting that his almost typecast of actor is helping you get a different perspective on his role than maybe is like actively being portrayed. It's not hurting it. It's just almost like you getting more out of it. Like, it's not like typecasting of like Jamie Dornan where you're gonna think he's always a creepy sex guy and everything he is because of 50 Shades of Grey. Even though that may like be thing, that's a bad typecast. Giancarlo Esposito has a very good typecast that adds to any role he's in.
Absolutely. He makes the villain someone that wants to, or like might have a redeeming quality in him.
You like him.
Yeah, exactly. You're more influenced to really follow along with his character and maybe not assume that he's just a complete asshole. So he's a really good character for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna have to put some explicit warnings on Apple Podcasts for this one. Johnny dropping words galore.
Is that a swear? Is that a swear?
No, you're fine. No, we're a hardcore podcast here. Did you not get the memo?
My bad.
I think no, trust me, you
I
are
assume
fine.
we're bleeping every time I've said Baby Yoda, right? That's what we're doing?
No, we're definitely not bleeping. That I think is a badge of shame that you have to wear for the entirety of the Star Wars fandom will be coming at you on social. But speaking of the child, I'm correcting myself, everyone. I haven't said it yet, I don't think. Look, we've gone on a tangent. There's so many characters we love, and not much of a speaking role for the child, but like I think, and John and I would probably think the same thing. Before seeing the show, we knew this was like the star of season 1, and that's kind of crazy. And like, look, he's adorable, we love him, but that's not always good for this genre. Not everyone loves Ewoks, not everyone loves porgs, right? Porgs, I think.
Porgs, yeah.
Porgs. Not everyone loves the cute part of Star Wars.
Babu Frick.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like that one a little more, in all honesty. I thought it was fun. I didn't think 9's iffy for me. Well, eventually I'll do a Star Wars episode, but 9 is iffy for me. The jury's not out yet on my actual reaction. But the question I want to pose to you guys, and it's a hypothetical, but I'm curious what your thought is. The child is an amazing part of the show, and it's clearly integral for that surrogate paternal storyline. It helps to have the pseudo father-child relationship. But I want to ask, is it super important, or is it a bit too distracting with the cute aspect of it to be a darker show? And maybe that's how Disney's doing it, but that's the hypothetical I want to pose to you both, and we'll start with Butensky on this one.
No, I think it's perfect for the show, and I think it's one of the best of both worlds. That it kind of is, obviously the child is going to make a great storyline for this show and where they're going. I think it also kind of gives Disney what they want of like this, family friendly character as well. It's almost the best of both worlds. And let's be real. Does anyone actually hate Yoda? Does any Star Wars fan not like the character Yoda? No. He's just such a likable and lovable character. Again, there's obviously no relation between those two, I don't think. But it's not. I don't think it was a very hard decision to do this. Like, it's great. And I think again, I'm thinking more of the business side of this, that this is the first holiday season coming up where they're going to have merchandise out for this show. You got to remember, they didn't have merchandise last holiday season, which was a really big deal because this show was already done by Christmas and Hanukkah holiday season. So the child is going to sell so much merchandise, but also add to the story as well. So it's almost the best of both worlds.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree, but I have my trepidations with season 2. I think for season 1, Baby Yoda was, I've mentioned it before, just the perfect juxtaposition for the Mandalorian. He was, the child.
6. I think you're up to 6.
Oh, let's keep it coming. I don't even know I'm apologizing. This is what he's known by on the internet, so whatever. But as I was saying, he's the perfect juxtaposition for the Mandalorian. And I thought they did a really good job of making him into a very subtly cute character as well, that you just really grew to love. The minor things of him reaching for the little knob on the spaceship, to I don't know why the examples off the top of my head are all on the spaceship. When Mando is down in the bottom of the ship and he takes over the controls and starts flying the ship. Like, these are cute scenes that really add to his character.
The soup one,
Drinking the bone broth, yeah.
the soup one is like the known right there.
Adorable.
That's the known one. I love
yeah,
that.
that one's so cute too. Like, there were so many really great things that Baby Yoda did in season 1, but I'm a little worried that in season 2, because I saw it in the first episode, that they're going to use it more rather than being like a cute thing, as a comic relief thing, which I didn't really enjoy as much in this first episode, because we saw twice. The first time was when they were at the fight scene and the guy pulls out a blaster on Mando with all of his like associates or whatnot. And then you see Baby Yoda just like close his shell to his crib. That was kind of like, it was funny once. Like, I was like, haha, yeah. But then they did it again when they're in the town and they had Baby Yoda like jump into the vase and then like hide from the monster. And it was less cute and more just like, you're trying to do something funny in the middle of this serious show. So I don't like that kind of humor. I hope that not all of the child is going to be that style of humor. I hope that they kind of revert back to his cute self. But I also get that the character has to mature and grow a little bit too. So hopefully we see some child words this time around.
I don't think we're ever going to see it grow up. I don't think it's ever going to grow up.
No, I agree. But I think you make a good point, Johnny, because I feel like with any other show, that would be my feelings as well. Like, I don't want this really tough show to have this comedic relief, but for some reason, this character is just so lovable. And I thought it was the right dose of the child. Like, if you really think about it, the child really had no impact on this episode whatsoever. None. If that's what they're going to give us, like, I'm perfectly fine with it. It was adorable. Obviously, the child's going to have more of a role going forward. Like, I don't think the show is just going to revolve around him, though, which I like about that.
No,
I don't want it to just be about the child.
It's not called the child, it's called the Mandalorian.
I completely agree. I just felt like for some reason in this episode, it was more overt than in other episodes where it's been a little bit subtle how the child is so cute, where this is kind of like, look at me, I'm the star of the show. Here's some funny lines that we can put in for the child. And it's like, well, like, I get what you're trying to do. I'm also the guy that complained in Black Panther when the girls says like, what are those? And everyone thought that was so funny. And I was just the dumbest thing ever. That took me straight out of the movie. It got me pissed off. So
I was gonna say, Mosho, you may like hate every Marvel movie. They litter their things with jokes.
Yeah, I mean,
littered with jokes, and it doesn't bug me, but I bet it bugs the crap out of you.
Yeah, it gets up my nerves. I'm not the biggest Marvel Universe guy, which is a little bit of a sin to say, I feel like. But
I mean, I understand you don't want your comedy mixed with your darker stakes
I just
media.
want it to be subtle. I want it to be subtle. I don't want to be so.
And that's what I thought this episode was. I thought the comedic relief was subtle. I don't think it was too much, because I'm so with you on that. Like, especially with MCU movies, like if they go too far with the humor, it just bugs me. But like, I'm just kind of going off a tangent here. But like, Infinity War was the perfect amount of humor at times. Really serious movie, but like, you had some comedic relief there, and that's what I thought this episode was as well. Like, those are really the only two moments where like the child was involved with.
And I think that's part of why I'm feeling that way at the end of it, because we didn't see any of those dialogues surrounding the child at all. We didn't see it coo or do anything, just like sitting there, any like side shots. It was really the only times they put the camera on the child at all, felt like to me, was those two moments. So that sticks out to me. I mean, the verdict's still out. They could do a phenomenal job throughout with the season as a whole. That was just something that I'm nervous about going forward, is Disney trying to make that character so family friendly, so younger, to try to sell like toys or whatnot. Like, you know, that they want to do with this character, that they might overdo it with the child, and then it'll just become a relic. It's not going to be a funny joke. You'll lose the point of what the child's supposed to symbolize. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, I mean, I brought it up just as a hypothetical. I'm surprised these deeper feelings you guys have on the matter. And I actually quite liked the first part with the shell, because I figured he knew what the little things off his wrist thing, all the little guys that shoot out, the like little hornets, whatever they're called. And so I thought that was, he knows what's about to happen. But there actually was another one of him like hiding in a bag during the crate dragon. So I thought like versions 2 and 3 were like, okay, we're doing a little bit of this, where the first one, I was like, the first one makes sense to me, because it feels like it's clearly reactionary to something that the child has seen before. But
they've grown together, and he knows the drill at this point. Like, he knows like something bad's gonna happen.
That's how I took it too, and that's why the first one I did enjoy at the time. And then once they just kept doing the same sort of scene, I was like, I've got the joke once.
You're over the shtick.
See. Yeah, but we'll see. I mean, baby, or the child baby
I'll give you a half one there.
was very, very cute the first season. So I'm hoping for more in this one.
So not that we're saying there's anything, I know that was a little bit critical, but if that's the most critical we're going to get on the show, clearly we have very strong positive feelings for the show. But is there anything that you guys either, I'm not gonna say didn't like, it'll kind of be a two-parter, or just something, a storyline, a plot point that you guys want more explored? I mean, for me, I know obviously we're hoping for more Cobb Vanth, and I'm assuming with Timothy Oliphant, who's not an unknown actor, he's clearly known. IMDb has him only at one thing, but I clearly think that's less of a what it's actually is, and they just don't know. I think no one knows how many episodes people are going to be, because no one knows who's even in the show still. But the big thing I want answered is all the Mandalorians from season 1, right? Like when they all came in and helped him escape the first time, and we see the pile of armor when they're back. But, I don't think we really know if they're dead. Like their fate's not super confirmed. It's hinted at, but it's not confirmed. If he's hunting for other Mandalorians, do we think he had a little bit of a tiff with the one guy who was played by Jon Favreau? Are they going to be a helpful force, or is his hunt for other Mandalorians really going to be based on the shows and not like on the animated shows and Boba Fett, as opposed to the Mandalorians who we've already seen? Because same thing, I'm assuming the armorer person is fine because we never saw her die.
Well, that's the one that I think you can have the argument on. Didn't he the Mandalorian have a conversation with the armor woman who basically said a lot of them died, but she was hoping that some of them fled off the planet?
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
So you assume that some of them hopefully fled off the planet, and we will find someone. I think that you're going to see another Mandalorian in this season if they took the direction that they did with episode 1, where he's actively seeking out a Mandalorian. I feel like eventually, it could even be this next week, who knows, but I feel like eventually, and it'll probably be early on, we're going to find a Mandalorian. I'm not sold on that, but that's my idea with it.
I'm hoping he sees a Jon Favreau guy again, because clearly I had like a tiff. Like, they clearly had a few like little fight things, and then they were buddies again, and just it felt like there was a little something there. But any storylines, extras, plot points that you guys want to see delved into further in this?
I guess like the number one thing for me is just kind of just seeing what's the deal with the child, and like, maybe learning more about the Jedi from that perspective. How, because again, like it seems like it's so unknown at this point to most of these characters. That's the biggest thing for me. And I guess, and obviously it's like why Moff Gideon wants him so badly.
For the new Death Star.
Exactly.
The new Death Star, exactly.
Death Star 3.
I'm gonna second what John really said. I feel like I just hope they do more things like they did in this most recent episode with the Tusken Raiders. Like, give me backstory on a lot of those characters that have previously existed in the world, or at least races of characters that have existed in the world. I want to know just more about everybody, and it's really cool to see them pay that homage and fanfare to the fans. So I just hope they keep that rolling.
Ton of new actors coming into season 2. We already saw Timothy Oliphant, Tamora Morrison, but we also have Carrie Sackhoff as Bo-Katan Kryze, who is from the Star Wars Clone Wars animated show, and as Butensky said, Rosario Dawson, who is seemingly I don't know if it's ever been officially confirmed, but I think it's like most people are pretty confident that she's going to be ex-Jedi Ahsoka Tano. And the new rumor that's circling around is WWE Sasha Banks is going to be playing Sabine Wren, who's from the Rebel shows, who also was a Mandalorian. And there's all these things of, there's graffitis on the walls, and she's the graffiti person. And we've seen someone who I think in the trailer looks like it's her and not Rosario Dawson, but she's in a robe, so it could be one of them, right? We don't know. There are all these characters is pretty much, it's like a live action follow-up to Star Wars Rebels. And with all of this, what do you guys, with all these, either could be a name or an actor, who you want to see the most? I mean, for me, it was Tamora Morrison. I expect him to be a big point of the show, a big part going forward. I don't think he's a throwaway. And John, are you finished up The Boys or no?
Yeah, I finished Boys.
Oh, good. So I think it's going to be more than like Shawn Ashmore's role in The Boys, and I got nervous and I teased it to John, and he was unceremoniously killed off on that. But I think we're going to get more of Tamora Morrison than that.
I hope so. And that for me, that's the biggest character as well. Seeing who he's playing. I'm not going to say he's a big actor, but like he's definitely been loved in the Star Wars universe. So it's going to be really interesting to see who he's playing and how large of a role he has.
See, I think I'm going to mention the other name that you brought up, The name that I'm most excited to see is just Ahsoka Tano in an actual live action Star Wars world with great writers, because we've gotten one badass female lead and the writing sucked. So let's see a badass female lead with some phenomenal writing, with the people that are actually care about the show. Let's see that happen. I just think that if there's going to be a character that they're going to bring back from like the original movies, or not even movies, but like the Clone Wars or whatnot, that is just really cool and gets a lot of attention, but not in the actual movies. That was really poor phrasing. I really think Ahsoka Tano is the one person that fans, if they're not aware of who she is already, will be like, oh my God, she's a badass. She's really cool. And I think they'll grow to really like her. So I'm excited to see what they bring out with that character.
It's also important to note that like Rosario Dawson just like kind of made it known that she loves this character and would love to play her and loves everything about her. So it's almost like the best of both worlds. Like this, she's so motivated to play this character. And that's really exciting because there's nothing like better than like an actor or an actress like joining a show that already loves the content and is motivated and happy to like be a part of this show. And it's not just for the money, I guess. I don't know. It's part of it, but she's clearly excited to play this role.
Well, that's kind of how it feels like The Rock's been campaigning for Black Adam for like 10 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, he is, and like even Ryan Reynolds in Deadpool. I mean, he had the rough movie first, but clearly it's paid off in the end. I 100% agree with everything you guys said. And I think the thing I'm curious about, and this is semi dipping into predictions, but you know what, maybe I'll fill that prediction in later. One more before predictions, before the real fun starts. So look, we have 11 movies, a few animated shows. Where do you think this specific show will go, and where will it be remembered when you think of it? And obviously Disney Plus is clearly not shying away from Star Wars shows. We got 2 more Disney Plus live actions and another Obi-Wan with Ewan McGregor, Cassian Andor coming, and we do have, I'm not super excited for the new animated like Clone Wars spin-off thing. Where do you think this show will land, and when you think of the grand scheme of when you think of Star Wars? Like, do you think there are people who are going to think of Star Wars and think of this before they think of movies?
No, I mean, not to be blunt, but like 4 or 5 are such iconic movies that those will forever be the movies that people think about when you talk about Star Wars. But I think this has a lot of potential to be the first thing that's thought of when you think of the new wave of Star Wars. So before 7, 8, or 9, before Rogue One and Solo or whatnot, I think this is just a really phenomenal storytelling. And obviously you can see the success that it's had if they're willing to create so many other live action shows based off of it. I also think that eventually Star Wars is going to go back in history and start doing things before the prequels, because that's where the books are heading right now. I know they're doing a couple, I think it's like called the New Republic series that are coming out in early 2021. So I think eventually they're going to try to expand that out in the live universe world too, and get something that predates everything. It's kind of just its own storyline as well, which I would be really cool for. I wouldn't be surprised if that's here in the next 2-3 years. I think Mandalorian as a whole has a place to stay and will be thought of as one of the main Star Wars of this new generation.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be known as like the main piece of Star Wars, lore. It's not gonna replace the movies because the movies are their own thing. But I think the Mandalorian will be known as the series that started this great Star Wars television universe that expanded outside the films. I think it will be its own separate entity, not competing with the movies.
Yeah, and I think just like you guys said, this is going to be right up there with the rest of the lore that, we've been hoping for. It's no secret. Even the prequels, the sequels, and Solo all have some controversy associated with quality. I think other than like 4, 5, and 6 to some degree, there's no question of those being good. I think there's a question mark someone would say a question mark, not me, but someone would say, oh, the prequels aren't good. Oh, the sequels aren't good. Oh, Solo's not good. But I think this show, I'd be hard pressed to think that someone would watch this and think this is like bad Star Wars stuff.
There's someone out there that watched Rogue One and thought it was bad. Come talk to me, because
Rogue One
that movie.
We'll give him a
was
lesson. I love that movie.
Rogue One was great.
We're gonna have a podcast about that episode, right, Nick?
I don't know how. I've never done one movie, but if there's 3 of us talking about it, I'm sure we can fill some time.
Don't worry, we'll figure it out.
We're getting to bold predictions land. So I like mine. I know that I sent you guys my talking points. I hope you don't take my answers, but I'm willing to go to the end of this list because I have one written down and one that I don't have written down.
I mean, let's hear it. I mean, I gave a bunch of my bold predictions that were all, by the way, all jokes. None of them are real. Don't hate me for those.
So I think mine are are real. I think I'll go first if you guys want then. So I think first one's not a prediction, it's just an assumption of a logic jump. The assumption is during this time Luke is making his Jedi school, but we're not going to get Mark Hamill, we're not going to get the late Carrie Fisher, we're not going to get Harrison Ford. We're not getting any of them, I think, ever in this show, and that's fine. Yeah, maybe we could get a Ewan McGregor, maybe. I don't think that's happening, but there's, you know, the closest to likely happening. What I think, Ahsoka Tano is somehow going to be tied in to his Jedi school that he's making and be our bridge to him without actually seeing Luke. That's my assumption, because like there's no way, you know, we like, you know, oh, the goal is to get the child to some Jedi people. What's the end game? Like that end game to us who know what happens afterwards, there's no mention of this child and Ahsoka and all these people. The assumption is they dead. Like in some way they're done, like they're dead. And so I don't know what this is going to be, but my assumption is they're going to end up at the Jedi school. That's the end goal. I mean, that's just my assumption.
I have two predictions personally. Nick, did you finish your predictions before I cut you
that
off?
Was one. You go.
Go ahead.
I like my last one. You can do your two if you want.
Okay.
Or however many you have.
My two. My first one is I think they will make a connection to the new trilogy, like you had mentioned. How they're gonna do that, I don't know. I mean, there is like they showed from the trailers that like the Razor Crest does crash on this icy, snowy looking planet. You know, could that be the new Star Killer base? I'm making this up, maybe. I don't know. But I think they're going to have to make a connection at some point with this new trilogy, because that's what these events lead to it eventually. Mm-hmm. My bold prediction, though, is it's very subtle in season 1. But we're obviously going to, at some point, we're going to see the return of the scientist that was working with the client. There are signs from the scenes that we've seen of him experimenting with the child that there might be some sort of form of cloning going on. You know, they showed symbols from Camino. I think in the end that Moff Gideon may want the child for some sort of cloning to get to understand these Jedi capabilities, the Force, capabilities. That's my bold prediction. I think we're gonna really dive into that. And let's be real, there's no coincidence that Tamora Morrison is playing some sort of clone, whether it be Boba Fett or not. Like, that'd be kind of cool. That he can.
It is Boba Fett. You need to stop saying that. It is Boba Fett.
I'm not confirming it yet, but like, regardless, I think Tamora Morrison's character can give us more details into Camino and the cloning process. I think they go hand in hand.
I never would have thought that was an interesting direction. I didn't think that at all.
Yeah, no, I just thought they were harnessing Baby Yoda for his like powers, more or less. I didn't even think anything of cloning. That would be wild.
That's interesting. I mean, they clearly use clones, and also, John, you're at 7.5 if you count that half.
No.
But if you want, I think this is probably, besides some of Mosho's jokes, I think this is probably the boldest prediction, but I also I feel like it's the most realistic. Look, this show is pretty much live action Rebels connecting the animated shows, right? I mean, we already, even in Solo, we saw the resurgence of Darth Maul animated, and in the movie Solo, we saw a not cut in half dead Darth Maul. So if you'd only watched the movies, you would have been really surprised at that turn of events. But clearly they're,
by the way,
so good. It's brief, but so good.
Loved it.
Clearly we're trying to bridge the gap even further with the live action and the animated shows as a full realized all canon thing. So I think this is going to be the live action debut of Grand Admiral Thrawn. And if you guys don't know who that is, there's main 3, but technically there's 5 books that exist about this guy who's like the only, because the Empire is very like anti-alien and like racist. That's sort of their thing. And this is like the only character that's an alien who is allowed in their deep ranks of like Moffs. And I don't think Moff Gideon is the main guy. Like, there's no way he's the main bad guy for the whole show. I don't think that's possible. I think he's working for this guy, because the last we saw of him in the animated show was he disappeared off into the ether, but clearly not dead, with one of the main characters on that show, Ezra Bridger, who there's an actor who's claiming that he's been cast in the role and hints at it, and that's like the least confirmed thing in this acting. But I think both of those characters are going to come back in some way, and that ship has been hinted at in like every movie in 7, 8, 9 as still functioning throughout. So their crew exists. I think they have like a Twi'lek, like one of the people with the like antenna, like snake looking things. I mean, there's a big purple guy too, like a alien purple fuzzy guy. So I'm curious if like how those are going to look in live action. That would be I mean, I feel like that's what's happening. That's the bold prediction I have.
That's a super cool prediction too. I hadn't thought about that at all, and I also haven't read the Thrawn books, but
They're
I
good.
know they're adding to that as well at this current time. There's 2 more of those that are set to come out too. So like it goes into their movie universe, it goes in the book universe, it goes into Mandalorian now. I could definitely see them trying to connect all the pieces of the Star Wars fanfare into one. I think that's, for someone that doesn't know a lot about the character and whether or not that feasibly makes sense, I think that's a really good shout.
Here's another really bold prediction, because you had mentioned Thrawn. Could that be another leapfrog to another main villain that they introduced into the new trilogy? Could they possibly introduce or even reference Snoke?
Yeah.
It's possible. Is he like the one that's kind of being the puppeteer, like controlling everyone?
Because we don't really like of the I'm sure there's a few things we don't like about the new trilogy, but Snoke being okay, it's a Palpatine clone, I guess, but like clear, like it's very much a throwaway explanation.
How much is Snoke known about? That would be my
none,
because I feel like he's not really known by anybody, and I could be wrong about this, but doesn't The Mandalorian take place a lot closer to Return of the Jedi than it would be to Force Awakens?
It does. It takes place about 6 years after Return of the Jedi. So hypothetically, I believe that the time tail between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens is about 30 years, give or take. So there's still a lot of time leading up to it.
Yeah, so I feel like that could be pretty early, but I mean, you never know. They're going to try to connect it. I think I like both your ideas, where they are going to try to connect it back to those new trilogy and everything else that's happening. So I'm excited to see where this season goes, man. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be blown away. And I know I mentioned earlier, like if they find a way to include like a flashback to Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan, I don't know how it would happen, but like my thought is if you have Ahsoka somewhere in live action and you're having Ewan McGregor be dressed as a character again, like even though at this timeline, he's dead, obviously, I feel like there's going to be some way they're going to try to like do a soft tease into him existing through some flashback through her.
Hating Christensen or give me death.
That's what honestly, I was about to say, I think if you're going to see one of them, you might see Hayden Christensen.
He would make more sense, honestly, Nick, instead of Ewan McGregor.
Well, sure. I mean, it hasn't been confirmed yet, but they're seemingly trying to get him to be around for the show.
I would love that so much.
Well, CW universe that Disney might try to be planning in Nick's eyes. I see where this inspiration came from.
CW, John, right? Somebody save me. That's a different CW. That's your CW. That's not my CW yet. I do need to watch those at some point. Like finish. I'm on season 1 still, so a little behind. But guys, any final thoughts on this? I think we've done a pretty solid job dissecting. But any more left field?
Honestly, I gave them all. I mean, maybe we'll see John Mulaney as a Wookiee.
I would love that. That sounds great. Get John Mulaney involved with this project.
I mean, we're gonna see a lot of comedians. I feel like I don't know why they love comedians so much in this Disney world, but
it makes no sense.
Let's get Jason. Was Jason Sudeikis already in it?
Yeah,
he played a scout trooper.
He was a scout trooper.
And he was the one that hit baby. That's my half. Wow, it was like a minute remaining in this podcast, and I slipped.
I'm at 0, just so
Jason
everyone knows.
Sudeikis, he played a scout trooper, and he hit the child, so we just extremely hated him. No, I want to see more of the child drinking bone broth, because that was adorable. Getting more of that.
That was so cute. And not eating frogs.
No, that was...
I'm all for it.
I'm wondering if we're going to see any more, because they clearly hinted barely at the like dark side of the child, like with choking and like the and the spaceship. So I wonder if we're going to see a little more of a...
Well, I don't know if I never thought that was dark. I just thought that was more the child has powers that it can't control.
Oh, I was thinking that science had like some impact on his like good and evil notion, and maybe I don't know. I was like, well, what are they doing in the thing? And the clone thing makes sense, but like I wondered if like there is some evil persuasion being scientifically induced, and maybe like
you're talking about the choking scene from season 1, right?
Correct.
So that's right after like Mando is in an arm wrestle with the ex-storm or sharpshooter. I can't remember what her actual
Republic sharpshooter, drop shooter, something like that.
Exactly. So they're arm wrestling.
Shock trooper.
That's the word. So I took that as their arm wrestling and the child's baby. As we'll do again. We'll round it to 9, 8, whatever it is.
8, I think. Yeah.
But he took that as Mandalorian was scared, or he was scared for the Mandalorian that someone was attacking it, and then used its powers.
Like, I might be looking too deep into this. It's a 9 episodes are out. 9 episodes of the show are out right now.
He's on a dark child. I love it.
Look, man, I like my shows dark and depressing. What can I say? Anything else from you, Mr. Butensky?
Just more bone broth.
That's a good place to end it. Well, folks, first off, thanks to our 2 sensational guests for joining us today for this amazing crossover episode that even the CW would be proud of. We're all talking one of our favorite things, Star Wars just overall, and The Mandalorian. If you want to keep up with us, you can follow me at NickNackIC or NickNackMovies, Twitter, Instagram at JAMosho998, and Twitter at JButensky. We're all talking movies, sometimes sports, if you want to keep up with what we're doing. But for the podcast, guys, we are constantly putting out stuff. You do not want to miss out on all this content we're putting out for these show accounts. And remember, folks, you two, I hope, are doing the same thing. We need your help leaving us ratings, reviews, Apple Podcasts, 5 stars, write a review, tell your fans, tell your family, tell everyone you know, go to random people on the street, take their phone out of their hands, subscribe and download, write a review, and it could be like a social icebreaker. I'm just saying, right? I mean, you guys are doing that, right?
Yeah.
Totally. Hey, if you don't leave a review, those Womp Rats might come and get you.
Even worse, a crate dragon.
Oh, wow. I love it. You guys are sticking to your nerdy roots. The 3 of us, just the 3 nerd migos, right? But guys, if you don't, you got to do that, guys, because, it is the way, right? Download and giving us PR. It is the way. It's what the child
Great ending.
You don't
Great
wanna,
ending.
You don't want to disappoint the child.
He has spoken.
That's all I'm saying. Well, folks, from all of us here, thanks for stopping by. Thanks to Buzzsprout for being our podcast host. And until next time, cinephiles. Pew, 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 pew. Are you not entertained? I think this is going to be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. I don't like goodbyes. Let's just call this see you later, alligator.
He's Nick McGann, the biggest Cleveland Browns fan on the planet.